Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi. Great. Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Hey.
Aloha.
Yes, it's evening. Our time zones have got closer together, so we can all be on at the same time.
Planets have aligned.
And I think this is the closest that we can ever sort of be, the most civilized for all of us.
Yes. I was telling someone about this today and saying how I've lucked out with being the lunchtime slot. And actually, when we did it last week, it was morning for me and like early evening for Arran and Corey, who was on. And that also works out really well for me. So, and I can do, I mean, we did one with you, Scott, where I had to get up at 2 a.m. But other than that, it's been all right. So I feel a bit cheeky there. We've got Owen and Todd in the chat. Hi guys. Yeah, for people that don't know, that tune in for the first time, and Ray's here as well. Hey, we normally do this on Thursdays at this time every week. Scott, Aaron and myself started it off. I think we're on episode 38 now, or 37. Mark was a guest of ours last year and has now become a regular with us too. We normally have guests on, but this is the first time we've been able to get a time where we can all be together for a while because of obviously time zones changing.
We don't need no stinking guests.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to do today, and we'll do it later on, is talk a bit about how this live stream could work going forward. And maybe if you're watching live now, you can join in the chat by suggesting some guests we might approach to put on. Corey's already suggested a few. And if you're watching in the future, you could drop that in the chat. I've got some other ideas I want to talk about, including having sessions where we don't have guests and we just have some people on that have been on before. And obviously there'll be a guest, but there won't be a new guest. So the sort of type of conversation we might have would be good. I'm seeing in the chat some interesting suggestions already. I'm not sure there'll be. Well, I don't know any personally. Anyway, that's what I'll say. And also today, it'd be great to just have a catch up with everyone, see how we're all doing.
Yeah.
Most excitingly, though, just before we went live, Scott mentioned something new that he's just bought.
Show us, Scott.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing?
I didn't think I would ever buy one again. But, oh, Mr. Strandberg.
You know, Scott, I don't call it buying guitars. I call it research.
You know, actually, that's kind of real here.
Oh, God.
He said somewhere. It needs a little bit of the middle pickup. Back the screws out a little bit, and the pickup didn't move. So I'm gonna have to. Next time I restring it, I'm gonna have to pull it out and put something under it.
And is there a binding, or is that just a trick of the light?
I haven't actually looked to see if it's faux or.
Is it like a faux binding?
I think it's faux.
Like, okay.
Because it looks like
exposed wood, right?
Yeah, it looks like just natural maple.
Nice.
So can you tell us some basics about it? Because if I don't know much about Strandberg, is this their standard design or is this some sort of special design that they have?
This is the standard, I think. It's the Bowden. I haven't seen too many other designs of theirs. GBO 21, 22. I think it was 22. I don't remember now. I think it was GGO 22. I've just leaned into the ergonomics, and I was just trying to come up with the most ergonomic design possible. So asymmetric carve on the neck, multi-scale, the wacky cuts that are, all the Les Paul lovers hate. And I didn't know at the time that I was recreating the Strandberg, basically. So,
yeah, but so is everybody. Like it's such a derivative design now. Like almost all ergonomic headless guitars are derivative of the Strandberg.
yeah.
Presumably that's because it's a design shape that really fits well, fits the body well.
Because of the human body, right? So they're all going to look similar.
Yeah. And I mean, mine wasn't headless, but it just seemed the body cuts just gave you a couple more comfortable ways to hold the damn thing. It works really well with a headless, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
I think I've mentioned on this podcast before a guy called Andre Flood. He has a YouTube channel that I find really interesting, where he does really in-depth dives into guitars, and like a guitar reviewer, but he really talks about the way it's made and the way it plays. But what's really interesting is he's got a whole series, I don't know if it's here as a playlist somewhere, where he breaks down the Strandberg in so much detail about the ergonomics of it all. And then to follow that up, he started a series of similar ergonomic guitars and what the differences are. And obviously, it's all from a personal point of view, but a lot of the things he says, because most people have a similar shaped body, are applicable to how we think about ergonomic guitars. Found him really interesting.
Just a tangent, real quick tangent subject. The Strandberg remind me of is it's got a 0 fret.
Yeah, it does.
And it's one of the things that bothers me about 0 frets is, I don't know if this is true for all guitars with 0 frets, but my Strandberg, when I bend strings, I can feel the string bending on the 0 fret, and I hate it. Like I can hear it and I can feel it sliding. And I'm wondering, are all 0 fret guitars like that? Because it's the only one I have with a 0 fret.
I've made several 0 frets now, and I've noticed it. It hasn't bothered me, but I have noticed it. And my nut, which I really consider more of just string retention, it's further away from the 0 fret than like this thing is. Because this thing, I mean, it's right there. It's right there.
Right next door, right? Exactly. But yet still with that string retainer guide or whatever you call it, I can still feel like if I'm bending, it slides on that 0 fret, and it just does not feel natural.
My first guitar build, I put a 0 fret on it. It was inspired by Brian May's Red Special, so of course that's what I was going to do. So I don't know whether it was a smart idea that my first ever guitar build had a 0 fret instead of a standard nut. But I know that was something when I was kind of researching measurements, was how close is the nut going to go to the 0 fret, and how close could I get it without chipping out the end of the fretboard by cutting it in. But yeah, that bend, it's not something that I've kind of noticed, just playing it incidentally. But now the next time I play it, I'll be looking out for it to see if it does that. But I'd certainly know that the 0 fret, the action does feel like amazing for those first few frets, just because the strings are as close as they can be. And I've sort of read in forums and things of people to discuss whether the 0 fret should be the same height as all of the other frets, or whether it should be slightly higher as you would sort of a nut. Because obviously if the 0 fret's the same height as your other frets, it's essentially the same as if you put a capo on anywhere else, on another guitar where the frets are the same height.
I always assumed that a 0 fret would be really, I've never played one, would be really good for the action. I hadn't really considered the effect it would have for bending. I'm assuming that if the nut's closer to the 0 fret, it's going to stay more in position when you bend it. But What I can't work out why. I know you're saying it feels different, but does it make a difference to the note? Presumably it returns back to its correct.
It'll return, but I can hear like the scratching or feel the scratching. There's also like a click sound sometimes too. I just don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah. In my case, I assumed it was just because my zero frets, I've used a stainless fret wire that's just a little bit taller than my fret wire. So in theory, it's right at about the height where you would, perfectly cut a nut anyway. But I didn't put a lot of effort into polishing the stainless zero fret, and I assumed that grind and click was just because I didn't clean it up all that well. But I don't know that for sure. 2 days ago I saw a Strandberg that was a little different, a little new, and hang on just a second.
I wonder how many people. Well, I wonder if anyone just watching now has played a Strandberg and really noticed it feeling different for them when they play.
I ran across.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Which reminded me of a couple different people's builds. Ty, one of his is has some similar stuff.
Yeah, I know you and Arran both pointed out with this year's Great Guitar Build-Off, there were a lot of people, I think it was you two anyway, a lot of people doing that multi-level guitar.
Yeah.
And this looks quite like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really getting...
I thought it was interesting, and honestly, the dark wood and the white finish kind of made a big difference there to me. But yeah,
it looks like the wood you can still see the grain through.
Yep.
There's a British builder called, I think his name Nick Berman, but Berman Guitars, and he does a lot of guitars where you can really nice wood choices, but then there's one bit on it like this that has a really bold color on the front, but still reveals on the bevel the wood underneath. And I love that combination of a really bold color and the wood together. But I love the way this still has that grain coming through. It looks brilliant.
Yeah. I wish headless hardware was a little more standard and a little more accessible.
That's the other thing that bothers me about headless guitars, or Strandbergs in particular, is like intonating a headless bridge is way more work than like a traditional like Fender Strat style bridge, because you have to like untension the strings, you have to loosen that bolt, you have to guess, right, sliding it back and then tightening and redo everything. And I can't stand that. It's just a Strat style bridge is so much quicker.
That's true.
Have you used any of those keys that you can get? I think EMG make them, and Floyd Rose make them as well, that clip on their bridges to hold everything in place while you're tightening the strings. I wonder if that would help with the headless type of thing as well, if there was something like that.
I don't think I've seen one of those.
Oh, so essentially the point of those is when you loosen the bolts, for example, on a Floyd Rose bridge, it will slip everywhere. So if you want to make a very slight change, as soon as you loosen everything, you won't know exactly where it was before to make it a slight change without really sort of jamming.
It's the same mechanics, yeah. So the Floyd Rose saddle is pretty much the same mechanics as like a headless bridge saddle.
So these clip onto the bridge and hold it in place. They sort of clamp it down whilst you loosen the bolts on the bridge. So it's held in place, the saddle. And then I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly, but there's a little bolt on the back of them that you can turn, which will then slide the bridge backwards and forwards, or the saddle backwards and forwards. So either that or it holds it in place and you have to push it yourself and then screw it down. But it's a way of keeping everything absolutely where it was before you make any adjustments.
Well, then I think we all need one of those in our toolbox. That sounds awesome.
They're apparently great, but well, now I'm not doing repairs or setups. I don't need it as much because I don't have many Floyd Roses. But I think if you were using Floyd Rose a lot, they're well worth it. So Ray just asked a couple of questions. One of them was the Strandberg body also looks quite small. Is that right? Or is that just in the photo?
It's small.
A little.
No, I've actually like superimposed like I use like a Telecaster as my fundamental starting point whenever I'm designing a guitar for like relative design, because you need to have some kind of context, right? And so I've superimposed a Strandberg on top of a Tele, and it is very small, and particularly in the back, because you've lost a lot of material at the very back of the guitar.
It's super light. It's really lightweight, which I didn't think for most of this time, because I've built a lot of Les Paul-like guitars that were solid and weighty. And I told myself, I don't care. I like it, and I'm not worried about weight. But having something this light is kind of nice. It almost feels like a toy, though.
And Ray and Mick are discussing in the live chat as well. I think if anyone's watching this in the future, you can see the live chat on the video screen. That with those individual saddles that you have on the Strandberg, because they're not all connected on a plate, like on a traditional Strat thing, does the 0 fret help with the conductivity to basically ground everything? Because that means every string is touching at that end, at the nut end. So you only need to ground one saddle and they're all grounded. That might be a reason.
That's probably why they went with the 0 fret to begin with. But the trem unit is on a plate, right, Scott?
Yeah, yours is a trem. Right.
Mm-hmm.
However, I mean, like the one headless I made, I didn't have that, so I don't remember exactly what I did. But it does have a 0 fret as well. So,
you know what's interesting? So a while back, I was working on a 65 Silvertone, and the gridge wasn't grounded. It wasn't grounded at all. And I was looking at the electronics, and there was a very strange Faraday cage thing going on in it, but the bridge wasn't grounded. And it was one of the quietest guitars I've ever played. Just recently, I got a Chinese guitar, right, from a factory in China, Telecaster, opened it up, and the bridge wasn't grounded. Like, I took the bridge off. There's no bridge hole, no wire. It just wasn't grounded. But the electronics were all grounded, like in series, like every component, the switch, knobs. And it's also super quiet. I'm just wondering, because I've never experienced that before, like ungrounded guitars being like uber quiet.
Can you connect a wire from that super cheap one, just it hangs out the back, round, and just clip it on the bridge, just to see if it adds to the noise?
Right.
Maybe there is a reason. I know with the AMG active pickups, and it might also be with their non-active ones that use the solderless system, but it's definitely with the active ones. They recommend you don't ground it because that can interfere with its system.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the early Strandbergs also came with EMGs. But yeah, you don't have to ground those EMGs, which is really fascinating as well.
I've heard people that are far more knowledgeable on that nonsense than I am discussing and suggesting that the wires were all you really needed to have covered. I don't know. It's always kind of surprised me, or I've never really understood why your bridge and strings need to be grounded. Why it would make a difference when electrically it's not actually connected unless you ground it. But I'm also a moron, so
I get confused with the grounding all the time. That same thing. You test something, or a lot of the things I've done, I've put in other circuitry, other things that are obviously going to have an impact, and often I'll kind of not say grounding, but you solder up the components so everything works, and then you go and play it through the amp, and it sounds a certain way, and then you think, well, actually, this sounds fine. Do I need to go back and add those groundings and things? And I know even on the great guitar build-off one from last year, because it had the crazy pickups with all the different outputs, and the diagram that I was given had the extra switches, and I can I'm getting it better at understanding how all the switching works, but it's still, for me, a lot of the time, it's just following the diagram, soldering it how it is, and then if something's not quite right, it takes me a bit of trial and error. And I had some issues with that one at the end, and it was because I had the push-pull pot as well, and it was playing up a bit, and it was it was cutting out when I was sending it was doing some weird things, but it was working a lot of the time, and I didn't feel right sending it off like that. So I thought my conclusion after a lot of trial and error was that I burn out the pot from soldering it. So I thought, all right, I'll get another one. I replaced that, and it was still acting up. And then I added an extra couple of grounds between some other components, and it was all fine. So kind of that's sort of my level of where I'm up to at the moment. That trial and error, I can kind of solve it, but if I kind of knew a little bit more, it would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah, I wish I knew more. This last GGBO build, the purple thing, they noticed they were having a buzzing problem and brought it by, and I think I told this story, and I'm like, I don't know why it's buzzing. I'm going through trying to check everything, make sure there weren't any bad joints, everything was soldered up right, everything was grounded. I know in the past I've run into like a grounding, what do they call it? Circular grounding or whatever. I couldn't find a situation that looked like that. Turns out I wound up switching the wires on the jack, and then it was quiet as a mouse. I thought if it was backwards, it wouldn't work, and it did, but it did have a grounding. What is that called? Circular
grounding loop.
Yeah,
a few people are commenting that to you now.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what it was. What did I had actually introduced, but it had quite a bit of a buzz, and I mean, I just lucked out that worked because I didn't know.
Well, even on this one I was just talking about, because you see the clips of Les creating that grounding loop on the Les Paul with the 4th pots. If you do the complete circle, that's the grounding loop, and it can cause issues. And that was the thing. The way I thought when I added the extra grounding to the build off one from last year, in my head and my understanding, it almost felt like that was what I was doing. I was creating that loop. But by adding that extra wire in, it actually solved the issue, or the pot issue altogether. And then I'm back to square one of not really knowing why it worked or why it didn't work. But at the end of the day, it was working as it's intended. So it's kind of like, all right, I've learned something from this one. I'll think again next time.
Definitely a few times I've gone round the cavity with just a bit of wire, connecting things together.
Just the brute force way, yeah.
In the chat there was just a discussion about Neil suggesting, I think he's probably right, the reason that the bridge is grounded is so that when you're playing, so your fingers are touching the strings, you're grounding the whole circuit yourself. Because there was a bit of discussion about this idea that some people have had buzz or a bit of a shock from using pedals that are powered without proper grounding in, or some sort of cable that goes to an amp that hasn't had the proper grounding in. I mean, that's quite scary to think that that's a possibility, that you could be plugging into something that even if your guitar's sorted, it could be a problem on the other end. But it does make sense that you become part of the loop. Again, so Scott always says guitarists know nothing, but we're being proven here to not know. This is like a chat in a forum thread where everyone's chipping in without proper knowledge.
What I said was guitar people are dumb.
Oh, yes, of course.
But that's specifically talking about, the quote from What's His Nuts.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
So that Joe Bonamassa quote, did anyone read the article? Like, I didn't get to read that.
Yeah, annoyingly, this didn't link to an article.
Right.
But for anyone that's not watching, because some people apparently just listen to this while they're working or driving, the quote from Joe Bonamassa, which Arran was saying has been taken out of context, is Fender are in a weird business. Imagine being CEO of Ford and your core business is making a car that looks the same as the one you made in the 1950s.
And the bit I added on before we went live was that, because I'd seen that one as well, or Daniel had shared that with some of us, but then I actually saw it reposted with a comment from his account saying that it's not, even though he said that, it's not exactly what he meant or his only sort of thoughts on it. But we kind of, thought about it being a good discussion point nonetheless.
At first, I thought, well, why isn't he mentioning Gibson or Gretsch? Because they're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have, and most people probably would have. It could have been Fender or Gibson equally. They're just the biggest names. But essentially, what I took from that was the same attitude that I've had, is just because of a couple traditional, situations. It's mostly just, I love this player and that's what they played. The whole industry kind of resists innovation. So then you get weird like us that will try any stupid trend just because it's new, like the zero fret. Ultimately, I wanted to do a zero fret just because I thought it'd be a nice, easy way to be lazy about cutting the damn nut, and and it's new and cool, and I could picture some normal guitar person picking it up and being confused.
There was so many zero frets coming out of those cheap guitars out of like the 60s, like coming from China and from Europe, Russian guitars in particular, because it's so easy to put a zero fret. It's much easier, and it's a shortcut instead of having to put a nut and slot a nut and adjust the nut slots. Like, you throw a zero fret on there and you're good to go, and you just kind of throw it out. So they've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
But still, it was always considered to be sort of like a low budget kind of option.
I didn't realize that. I know most of, or if not all of the little things that that we've just not used to, and just because of that, just assume that it's a new feature. A lot of those things have been around for a very long time. Fan frets has been around since before electric guitars, I believe.
Oh yeah. I once did a search on the U.S. patent site for just guitar-related things to kind of get ideas, and I saw one for fan frets, but it was an L-shaped fret. So I went boom, and then a straight angle L, boom, like a check mark. And you can clearly see the illustrations there, but it works the same way. Like, it doesn't matter what shape the fret is; it just matters where the string and the point is. Right? It's a point, so it makes no difference what shape the fret is. But I thought it was super interesting that you see the very old patent for L or checkmark shaped frets.
I once had a really great afternoon just going through Google patents, entering guitar and looking at things. It's well worth it.
Absolutely.
That L fret would be fine until you go bend.
And then even that would be kind of interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you bend it off the elbow, that would be
weird. Be pretty awesome.
I can see Mark going, I'm gonna try it out, man.
Well, I mean, I've already had those ideas. Like, so when I built the exponential curved fret, right? The curve can go two ways. The curve can go this way, or it can go this way. So you can build an S-shaped fret. So convergent versus divergent, right? So right now they converge, right? But if you do both together and they meet in the middle, you can make an S-shaped exponential fret, and it would work. It works totally theoretically on paper, right, on the spreadsheet. But building it would be very hard. How do you bend a fret into an S shape?
Well, this is back to our Joe Bonamassa quote. Also, how can you and why would you? And you don't know until you've done it. You don't know how to do it until you've properly tried it. You don't know what effect it will have until you've done it. And what I find most interesting is you don't know what effect it's going to have on music until musicians are using it, and they find innovative ways to incorporate these things or play a bit differently because of it. And that links back to what we always say about guitarists being, you've got the best phrase, Mark, about being seeped in history. No, that's not the right word, but
something
you've
like
got
that, right?
Yeah, that the tradition of everything, and that's why things don't change. I think so much looking back on things that are assumed are good, but it was just that's how it was done. And for the first time ever, I heard an idea that a concept I hadn't thought of before, which was Chris from Franklin Guitars said that when we're looking at a lot of the guitars that are still around, the older guitars from the 50s, 60s, 70s, not necessarily just Gibsons, etc., we're only looking at the ones that have made it. All the crap ones probably aren't around anymore. They've been binned or scrapped or whatever. So when we're looking at these guitars, we're looking at the pick of the crop as well as just the originators of the guitars.
We're talking about like timeless design versus like design that is kind of built in on trends, right? So if you think about like technology design, like think about the first iPhone. I mean, if you look back at that, it's like the most ugly thing in the world, right? But back then it was like the hottest design known to man. Same thing with the iPods. Like I look back at those and I think those are not timeless designs. But if you look at like a Zippo lighter, it's timeless. If you look at compare Converse sneakers, timeless designs, right? And I think that some of these guitars, when you think about the curves and the lines, those just work because they were just well designed.
That's one of the things I kind of think about, because you see the same memes that will be like a Fender P bass, and it's every decade and it's exactly the same, and then it's compared to the phone or the television, the equivalent. And my thoughts kind of go to, all right, what else is there from the 1940s or 50s in other technology or gadgets or cars or whatever that has essentially stayed the same shape? And that's how I kind of try to work out whether it's just electric guitars or other things that have found something that works early on, and people have stuck with it. But I kind of think as well that I think the time in history in the 50s and 60s when the Fenders and the Gibson shape was out there was also coincided with the post World War. This is my teacher brain working, that the post World War II boom with the teenagers being an age group that didn't exist in the past, and pop culture and TV came to Australia in 1956. So all of a sudden, more younger people were seeing these things that they mightn't have seen in the past, and we sort of know the guitar heroes of the 1960s that people saw, and they were using, these are the guitars that they were using. So I kind of also think maybe it's due to the guitar heroes that were playing it, and then in the 80s and 90s, even though there's still guitar heroes, but there maybe hasn't been the same iconic guitarists that are using the other brand guitars or shapes or models.
I definitely agree. I just read, I have to get it in another room, I'll grab it in a minute, a book that has different chapters in it charting the history of guitar, and each chapter focuses on normally a guitar player or guitar builder, and it talks very much about the influence of television and radio on guitars. But one thing that was really interesting was the story of Rickenbacker and how they did everything they could to get out to America to get out to in the place in America where George Harrison was when the Beatles were touring, to get him some guitars to play live, because they knew that would be the best marketing they could have.
Oh, don't know what's going on.
There we go. Sometimes one person drops, don't come back. Oh, I see Ty's here and disappointed by the beard. I've got the book out just for you. Right. Ray mentioned in the chat a minute ago this Electro Glide by Bond Guitars, where it doesn't have frets, but doesn't have fret wire, but the frets are angled.
Yeah.
So by holding down on the fret, you go off the edge of the fret, which seems brilliant. But I wonder how quickly that material wears down and what it's made from.
I remember Ben talking about this once upon a time, and it was the first I'd heard of it, and apparently it was an aluminum fretboard.
Right. Well, surely that would wear quite quick, wouldn't it?
I don't know with aluminum. I don't know. I assume
I think it would wear out. I think steel is stronger than aluminum, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess it would kind of depend on your style of play as well.
Yeah. But one other thing that Ben had said was that it does. I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember exactly what he said, but apparently there was a difference in feel and sound.
Well, there's a demo here. I won't listen now, but I'm going to leave that up for me to watch later. Yeah, I don't want to share someone else's YouTube here and get some copyright strike or something.
I don't know how feasible that would be, but it was an interesting idea.
Well, as Ray says, they only made them for a couple of years, so 2 years. So maybe that was evident, right? Maybe the reason they only made them for 2 years tells us that within 2 years they were already wearing down. By the way, Ray from Custom Unlimited Designs is on next week, and he's going to talk very much, I hope, focusing on, although he seems to have loads of knowledge about guitars, on his 3D printed guitars and the way he's using 3D printing, which seems to me to be very different to what I'd seen for 3D guitars before. So I'm quite excited about that. There we go. It was made from anodized aluminium.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a great concept, but I mean, I'd like to try to build one day for sure, just to see again what does it feel like, what does it sound like, and then also what's the lifespan of something like that.
I toyed with trying to carve one time just for the hell of it, knowing full well that a wooden fretboard like that would definitely it wouldn't last a month probably, but I didn't get very far with it anyway. My chisels aren't that nice.
I guess with a CNC, you could easily mill one or cut one.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm saying easily. You've got to design the file first. There you go. So other than buying new guitars, has anyone else or Scott buying new guitars, anyone else been buying things? Well, for example, last night I spent quite a while on eBay doing what I used to do before I got into guitar building, which is looking at all of the second-hand effects pedals that were up for auction and seeing if I can sneak in and get something that I've never heard of before at a good price. Not that I've been paying much.
Probably this year life's been busy in work and other things, so the guitar building hasn't been as busy as other years. But certainly effects pedals. The last probably 6 months, I've collected a few from local Australian builders, which has been really cool.
Oh, nice.
Getting their take on famous classic pedals and putting their own spin on it. That's sort of what I've been playing around, looking into guitar pedals a little bit more as well.
I should do something like that because I never really knew what to get. For years I wanted, and finally last year I finally found one and just bought it because the price just never changed. Was the EVH 5150 overdrive, which I like.
I've got to say, Mix just said he bought a load of pedals in the past on eBay. If you're not buying a really boutique pedal and you're just buying your average pedal secondhand on eBay that's currently being produced, then they seem to be a roughly consistent price they go for on eBay, give or take a few dollars, $10 or whatever. So I used to just buy pedals and then sell them again and just sort of rotate round just to experiment with them until I got the sort of things I liked. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to do that now. I last week put a load of pedals that I've got just hanging around on Reverb, and I thought, well, none of them have sold yet, but just in case. So I've been bidding on things on eBay. But I don't know why. It's not like I don't know if I'll get as much use out of them as I think I will. But I'm quite intrigued by what I've been doing for the Jurgs Cup, which I'll talk about a bit later. And I'm hoping once they're finished, I'm going to play them a lot. So I wanted to get some cool new things to entice me to play even more.
Nice. One thing I did buy end of last year was I was actually going to make one myself, and I sort of priced it and looked into it, and I just couldn't be bothered in the end. What's the brand? The English brand, the pedal switching system. What's the brand the guy from that pedal show does?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Someone will know. What is it? It's in the other room. But it's their Quartermaster series. So basically it's pedal switching. So essentially the pedals are completely out of the loop. They're not even, rather than a true bypass to get out of the system, it's not even in the loop. and they're all, it's basically mechanical switches if you want to make your own. So I kind of designed it. I was going to make my own and make like a big timber strip out of it, which I still might do one day. And then I started on that track and then priced how much stuff I'd need. And in the end, it was like, I'm going to buy one. So that was one of my purchases. And yeah, then kind of come a bit same. I've collected a lot over the years, but all my pedal boards have been homemade, wooden ones out of scrap wood, which was awesome. But last year I decided, no, I'll get this, the Quartermaster pedal switcher and a proper pedal board and set it up that way. So that was probably my sort of purchase sort of thing in the past. But I'm not a super heavy distortion sort of person. So most of the pedals I've got are all overdrive, tube screamer variations, boost pedals played through a tube amp, and I just have fun with getting, different pedal stacking kind of combinations. But I did discover I've got a fuzz face pedal, which I got in the must have been mid-90s, and it was kind of that stage before all of the fuzz face variations sort of took off. And I saw one on eBay that came up on my feed, and it was actually quite pricey now. So that's definitely one I'll never part with. And certainly it's definitely not a Klon, price range, but the price was enough that I thought, maybe I shouldn't, leave this on the board and take it out to gigs and stuff down the track. But yeah, that's probably my little fun purchase stuff over the past little while.
Since you guys brought up pedals now, sometime ago, it was a few years ago, I was looking for just something new, and I ran across Hot Tones, these little tiny pedals. I've got one across the room, but they're small. They're small enough there's no room for a battery. The cable jacks are actually offset too, because it barely fits in the case. Little tiny cute little things, but it was just, I don't know, it was just cool. And the loop pedal that I have, the only loop pedal I have is a Hot Tone little loop pedal. And it's got the bare minimum of function. And I need to spend more time with a loop pedal.
Yeah. They are fun.
Now I'm going to have to spend the day looking at, reviews of these. And they're all discontinued. All the little ones are discontinued now, but now I'm going to have to look at reviews and listen to sound demos on YouTube and order some more. I got to fill in the collection because they had a bunch of these little things.
Jackson said he just got one of these. The Dave Grohl. Why can't I get rid of that? The Dave Grohl new signature guitar. There it is. I would love to play one of them, I think. I love the headstock. Have any of you seen, I can't remember what it's called, the Foo Fighters horror movie? Studio 666, that's what it is.
I haven't seen it. I have it sitting there. I just haven't watched it yet.
It's surprisingly good.
I'm sure it is.
They're not all the best actors at all, but it is fun. And it's very tongue-in-cheek. And the beginning's quite violent as well, like gory slasher. But it's definitely worth a watch if you're into Foo Fighters and don't mind a slasher horror film.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I guess, before the Dave Grohl signature, I guess, came out, or maybe it was months ago, there was a flood of broken Dave Grohl signature phones on eBay, like broken necks, broken headstocks, cracked this, cracked that. I guess from the shipping or from manufacturing, a lot of them got damaged, and they just kind of threw them up on eBay, brand new. So these were brand new Dave Grohl Epiphones, and I was kind of watching a few of them because I thought, well, I'll pick one up for like a couple $100 and fix the headstock or whatever. But they were all selling out for really high bid prices. But I thought it was super interesting that just a flood of broken Dave Grohls were up on eBay.
I hope that is a shipping incident that was quite severe and not a bad design.
These were brand new. It had to have been during shipping or when it's traveling wherever it was made.
So they have the angled headstock on them, or is it a flat headstock?
It's angled.
Yeah.
It is angled, yeah.
But I wonder, are those people buying it they must be buying it because they know they can fix it.
Oh yeah.
Or do they think the main one's going to sell out and they're trying to get in?
No, I think it's just, you could get it for like half off nearly if you just want, a little bit of glue. It costs you like 30 cents in glue to glue a headstock back on, and you got yourself a Dave Grohl.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you meant they were going up for nearly the full price.
No, but a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, right. That's one of the things I used to notice with pedals on eBay is people would sell something secondhand and there'd be shipping and there'd be a bid. And if you don't look carefully enough, sometimes the new pedal from a company that doesn't charge shipping has a set price, and the bidding war goes higher than the price of buying it from the same platform from eBay without the shipping, without needing to bid. It was weird.
There's just remind me, there's a Australian pedal group on Facebook, but I don't know how often it is, once a month, so they'll have a pedal swap. So the idea is that if you've got tons of pedals that you don't use anymore, you can just post the pedals that you don't mind swapping for someone else, and then other people will post their pedals. So you're not out of pocket anything. It'll just be like a pedal swap kind of thing for equivalent value or whatever. So that's not I've never sort of done it myself, but I've always liked that idea that if you're after something or someone posts something that you've got it, you could sort of say, oh look, I've got that one. I'd be happy to swap. What have you got to offer?
One of my friends is really into board games, and there's this board game thing that happens through a forum a couple of times a year, which seems very similar, where everyone puts up what games they've got to get rid of that they don't want anymore, and everyone puts up what they want to get, and then somehow a computer algorithm matches people up, and you've just got to send yours to whoever. And sometimes it's like a 3-way send. So I don't really know how it works. It must all be on honesty that you're actually going to send it to each other. And then it's totally not about the cost. You're not trying to necessarily get a game that is the same cost as your board game. It's about getting a game you want to play. Because modern board games can be quite expensive. And it's an addiction which I think is quite similar, buying them, not necessarily even playing them. It's quite similar to buying effects pedals.
Interesting.
I've been hunting on eBay and Reverb for an 80s Kramer. Like I'm trying to get into like the old 80s like hair metal guitars, and I'm trying to find 80s is vintage now. That's crazy. Like 80s is vintage, and the prices are just astonishing, and especially Kramers, which I guess people love for some bizarre reason. But I'm looking for the quintessential hair metal reverse headstock 80s single pickup, the glam rock hair metal 80s Kramer, and they're just so pricey and expensive. But I need one.
Kramer would be the one.
Yeah.
Well, again, when we did ages ago, we suggested to each other some YouTube channels that we like watching, and there's a guitarist called Kayla Kent who I don't know what she does entirely now, but to start with, it was just covers of Pantera songs, and apparently Pantera almost hired her, but they got Zakk Wylde, so you're going to go with Zakk Wylde really, because she's the closest they've ever heard to someone sounding like Dimebag than anyone else. But she did a series a while ago where she was going through all the cheap Kramer guitars that she could get hold of and demonstrating them.
Yeah,
and
she plays Kramers,
yeah, it was cool. I'm not, when I think of Kramer, I also think of crazy paint jobs. But
that's exactly why I'm getting in it, because my next project is to do a crazy paint job. I'm going to do a series of crazy finishes, and so I need a base model, right, to put the crazy finish on. And so I thought, I'm going to go all out and go 80s, right? So I got to get an 80s guitar, and I still can't find one that's really affordable for this quick project. I ended up just yesterday buying a Jackson Soloist. So not quite 80s, or it doesn't have the same vibe, but it's basically a hair metal guitar. And I'm going to use that as the base for like this crazy finish project I'm going to work on.
Interesting.
I'm just looking at them now, yeah. So something like this.
Yeah, I picked one up, used, and It's got the pointy head. It hits all the marks. It's got the pointy headstock. It's a neck through design. It's flat, right? So I can't have any curves for this finished job I'm going to do. So I think it's going to work really well.
I'm intrigued. Are you thinking of doing? You don't have to tell us about what the specific thing is, but you think of doing a one job on it and then that's the video, or are you going to use the guitar over and over for different finishes?
No, it's for. I need the bass guitar for the one finish. I don't mind. I'm gonna do a hollow flash finish. Just let you guys know. So hollow flash was like a big thing in the '80s. So it's basically like this iridescent holographic film on it. And Kramer was the one that kind of like did this. Kramer, that's why I wanted a Kramer. So I want to do a hollow flash. I'm gonna grab my hollow flash material from a guy in Australia. He's the guy that's selling the cheapest, like the actual film material. And these are heat transfer films, so they're microns thin. Right. And you use heat, and it only works on polyurethane. So you can't put this on bare wood. You can't put this on lacquer. It's got to be polyurethane. And then what you do is you use heat to put it on. You put it on patches, and you vary the angle of the patches to get the varying light to hit it at different angles. And once you do all the patchwork for the hollow flash, it looks really incredible. The thing is, you can't really find this material anymore because I guess the stock is still from maybe the 80s or something. But I'm definitely wanting to do one. I think it would be so rad, and you don't have to clear coat it. So the idea is it's a microns thin. You can't remove it unless you get like your keys and scratch it, and you don't want to clear coat it. And so basically it's smooth to the touch because it was microns thin. You're using heat to basically chemically bond it in some manner, and you're done. I think it's gonna be awesome.
It sounds really good.
I'm just trying to find. There's someone I know that has done that, but not. It's not in the same way. He's done it with a spray paint, so it's clearly not the same material. Just trying to see if I can find an image of it. He had loads of difficulty doing it with a paint, and I don't think it's as wearing as what you were doing.
Yeah, you want to use the film for sure. And all the things that I've seen, I mean, there's even a company right now called Badlands that are releasing like brand new hollow flash guitars, and they're just incredible. I mean, if you're into the 80s, if you're into that aesthetic.
This is what he was doing. It's the only picture I can see of it, but it's come out quite funny in the photo. But I've seen it in real life, and it was pretty cool. But it was painted.
Yeah,
so
I think if you search for like Badlands, Daniel, Badlands is the company today that is doing them, and they do limited runs of these guitars, and they're just really gorgeous. At least to me, they are.
Oh, now I've definitely seen Badlands before, and I remember going onto their website, which is where I am now, and it's not as good as must be their social media because it didn't have some of the cool stuff on it. Let's see what they've got on Instagram. I'm intrigued though.
Yeah,
I love you embracing the classic hair metal. Do you know those charity songs you get, like Live Aid, where lots of different musicians come together and perform? I saw a Swedish one from the 80s where Swedish heavy metal bands had come together to do some sort of charity song, and it was an awful song, but it was just like a sea of mullets and hairspray. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. I wish I'd saved it now. I didn't think I'd ever talk about it again. I thought it was going to haunt my dreams. Oh, annoyingly,
something occurred to me getting back to like the Joe Bonamassa quote. Like when we're talking about like why some guitars kind of like made it, right, Aaron, and why others didn't. And I'm wondering, and certainly there's a design element, but certainly there is an element to like feminine curves in some of these guitars that might be the reason.
We all dropped out again?
We've all dropped out again. I don't know what happened.
That's very random. Yeah, it's something that I have thought about, a lot. And I'm I'm a Fender sort of guy if I had to choose one guitar to have forever. So that sort of influences a lot of my sort of thoughts. But I always sort of come back to the people that were playing them. That the 1950s you had Buddy Holly on a Strat, and then in the 60s you had Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. I think whether those first couple of decades you had such iconic people playing them, and also from different sort of music genres. It wasn't just the same kind of sound. But yeah, whether the shapes or the proportions, that I think it is quite unique to guitars.
Yeah, I'm a Strat guy for sure too, but I never was influenced by like Jimmy Hendrix or Clapton. For me, it was the 90s and it was Billy Corgan. I play Strat because Billy Corgan plays a Strat. I'll play one.
Yeah. Well, actually, for me, it was Stevie Ray Vaughan. So that was the music I listened to, and the first Strat that I bought wasn't a Stevie Ray Vaughan signature one, but it was the Sunburst and the Rosewood fretboard. Like everything was just like that.
I was going to say
yeah, and they're so comfortable to play. Whenever especially standing up and performing, that if you use a Les Paul or something else, as soon as you pick up the Strat and put it on, I don't know. To me, I'm reluctant to say that it feels like they got it right in the first place with just the shapes and the carves and everything. But I don't believe that. But it kind of, I don't know. Sometimes I feel tempted to kind of simplify it too much.
You need to play one of Scott's guitars to get the feel to fit the curve.
That's the thing. I've never played a Strandberg or a lot of.
Well,
less. I actually haven't played a lot of less traditional guitars. Is probably a statement I could make for how they actually feel and sound. I've certainly seen a lot on videos and other people building and making them, but probably from the guitars I've actually played myself, it has been more traditional, shapes and designs.
When a couple of years ago, when I forgot the name of the company, they did the little brain work. The kit competition thing when I did macaroni noises.
Tommen.
Yeah.
Tommen.
I don't know for sure just how close that kit is to actual Strat dimensions, but I hadn't actually laid hands on a Strat for quite some. What the hell?
Every now and then it seems to be Mark drops first, and then we all drop.
This is a weird one tonight.
Not blaming you, Mark.
Okay.
I didn't touch anything.
But what I was saying is I hadn't touched a Strat in a long time through years of building, I guess, and it felt kind of alien to me. It felt really large, and it just accentuated in my mind how flat it is. But
for me, my first electric was a Strat, and what happened was when I was a kid living in London, lots of the London boroughs had music centres, music schools that were funded to go into schools and teach people to play. So we were taught classical guitar, but they taught other things as well, loads of different instruments. But the centre of the school had a repair centre there, and they bought in a guitar for me, and they just went traditional and got a Squire Strat. But I remember just before I got it, I went to a guitar shop. First time I've been to a music shop. And I was quite naive. I was only 11. I didn't know a lot about guitars, really. And someone showed me a Floyd Rose, and I did not understand what I was looking at when they demonstrated a full dive on it, and the strings went all floppy. And I was like, why would you need that? And I so regret not buying that. It could have all been different if I'd had that from the beginning.
I remember, I think it was probably Vito Bratta, I think, but it was 80s stuff. The Steinberger.
Mm-hmm.
I was just enamored with this because it's new. It's crazy. This thing has no head. How does this even work? And I didn't realize at the time. It basically was the 6-string cigar box guitar in a way. But I remember being enamored with that. So I also do. I know in high school I've got a notebook or had one where I had drawn Strats and Les Pauls all over it. So still, I mean, that's what you were inundated with all the time. So those two shapes were iconic already. But I wasn't closed off to new stuff. Anything new, you're like, oh wow, that's amazing. I never got anywhere near a Steinberger though. I don't know how rare.
I'm probably going to misrepresent him, but there was an artist called Kandinsky, who was a famous abstract artist. But he also wrote about art and art theory, and he wrote about Picasso, or talking about Picasso, and talking about genius. And he said, what happens is you have a genius like Picasso, and they're top of a pyramid, and then they inspire a few people to copy them, or to be influenced by them. And then those people inspire more people, and it's like a pyramid scheme. It just goes bigger. But with a real genius, once they've done their thing and other people being inspired, they're moving on. They're moving on to something new, to experiment in different ways. They've left behind that initial thing whilst everyone else is copying. And what happens to start with is you just have this mass of people trying to do the same thing as the people that are really inspiring at the time. And then that just lingers. It slowly spreads out. And I wonder if it's the same sort of thing with the guitar, because as we were saying, or as Arran was saying, early TV, that would have influenced people. There weren't that many makers around, people in the right places to get their guitars seen by people.
Right. So in a sense, we've all been kind of brainwashed to love these particular shapes because we had no other options at the time.
And Jimmy Page played a Les Paul.
I think there is something I like about those kind of alternate history novels and TV shows and things where something slightly different has happened and the world is different because of it. And no one's ever going to make a TV show where Fender invented a guitar that looked different to the Strat and the effect that's had on the world. But who knows what difference the world would be if the Fender was a flying V or a Warlock shape, the initial one.
So getting back to that art philosophy that you were just talking about, Daniel, it doesn't feel like that applies to the guitar industry at all. It feels like we have the status quo, and that status quo has been basically the same and steady for the last 50, 60 years. There's certainly innovation. There's certainly some derivative copies happening of that innovation, but it just feels like the top of the pyramid, which is the most important part, doesn't really change much. It's like a plateau. It's not a pyramid.
I think you're right. Yes, I think you're
So
definitely
it's slowly
right.
into a pancake.
It's like I feel like a lot has changed, or at least my knowledge and experience of what guitars look like has changed, because my Instagram feed is full of boutique builders, small companies, people that experiment with things, hobby builders from the Great Guitar Build-Off who aren't trying to make a mass-produced thing, who may be trying to emulate a guitar design that exists, but also are just experimenting with things like getting their curtains and putting them in resin and sticking them on the surface of a guitar. It all feels quite different. But then a couple of weeks ago, for the first time in a long time, I went into a guitar shop and everything looked the same. And I was wandering around, looking at them, trying to find some inspiration. And the only sort of inspiration I found were in a few guitars, and it was the color schemes that they were using that I thought was really interesting. But there wasn't anything there in design at all that I thought looked good.
Yeah. I think when I was thinking about building a double neck guitar, it was just a thought, right? And what was bothering me was the lack of symmetry. Double neck guitars looked like they just melted two guitars together, and I kind of didn't like that. What was bothering me was this lack of perfect symmetry. And the problem is we all build our guitars based on a scale length line and a nut line. And that's a perfect geometric shape. And every guitar that we make is always going to be formatted to that fundamental, right? Always. But what if we change that? So I thought, what if I build a double neck guitar where the scale length, that center line, right? This is the only time you have basically a 90-degree angle, right? Because we have a trapezoid neck. What if we move that scale line to the end of the fret, and the edge of the fretboard is perfectly straight with a 90-degree angle, and then this tapers off to the end? So you're making the trapezoid shift. That way I can have two perfect edges for the next, and they taper off this way. And that changes the fundamental design, the geometry, and you get something different.
You call
it was just a thought process. Yeah, it was just a thought experiment.
Make them headless and call it the Millennium Falcon.
That was what I'd made, the Millennium Falcon.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought of from the front.
But that changes the geometry. Yeah. The problem is we don't change our geometry. We don't. And it's always going to look like a guitar.
True.
I've got something to show you. I find these very interesting. Let's see if I can share it. I've definitely mentioned them before. It's a company called Deadly Bows. So here that sort of, maybe it's not actually, it's hard to tell in that picture. That is actually angled like a normal guitar. It's just got a longer fretboard on the side. But this, I don't think this is perfectly straight.
It still looks really cool.
It just makes things that I think they look cool, but they also to me look like I want to try playing that, because I can't imagine what it feels like to physically use some of his instruments.
That's the point. Like, it's going to alter your playing style. So now you don't have a guitar, you have an instrument. And this instrument is a stringed instrument that you can approach differently and make different music. And now everything changes. From this point on, your music changes, your riffs change, everything changes. And that's really cool. That's really just amazing.
So this is one where it's almost looks like it's in reverse, the neck.
Yep. That's awesome.
But I wonder, based on the other image I saw of his, I imagine the strings that come off here, but stay more or less parallel with each other, as opposed to spreading out. But who knows? I might be wrong. I'm just going to show you what I'm doing at the moment, if I can get this across. It's not the same. Unfortunately, I've meant to bring one in, but I've left it in my workshop. I've been using these. These are IKEA table legs that I've chopped up. Let's see if I can zoom out. And so they're going to have one or two strings on them. And I'm not sure how I'm going to tune them yet. I'm going to have to set them up, make them, and then set them up and leave them a few months to see how well they stay and don't bow, because it's just a leg. I'm not putting a truss rod in it, which I think would be all right for one string, we'll see. But I'm just intrigued to what it would be like playing a one string or a two string instrument, and how I could tune the two strings, whether it's an octave or a fifth or something like that. But Mark, they're made of bamboo and it's horrible. I'm not enjoying it at all. I've got to say, it all felt great until I started having to sand or chisel against the grain. And then everything just splinters everywhere, and I'm constantly trying to glue bits back together, and I wasn't enjoying that. Obviously, you've got to be more subtle and skilled than I am with the chisel to do it, but not much fun. I can't remember what you said about when your CNC was working on the bamboo guitar you made. Did it have issues going against the grain?
It cut very easily. Right. If I think about like the easiest wood to mill on a CNC, it would be something like a soft mahogany, right? Really soft, right? I don't like doing ebony, because ebony will splinter off. But this does have a grain, so bamboo has a grain, and it's the fibers that they glue together. Yeah. And so I think if you're cutting a certain way, right? Like if the bit's turning this way, you can chip off definitely one of those fibers. And I was doing the same thing. I think there was 3 or 4 pieces where I had to glue back on, but they were large enough shapes that I could glue back on. And as far as chisel work, I had 0 problems with the chisel. Like the chisel was excellent.
To be fair, the issue I had really wasn't with the chisel, it was with the router bit. And to back that up, I used 2 different router bits. One of them is a Radian tool one, which is really good and new, worked fine. And one was don't even know what make it was, a cheap thing that I'd had around for a while. And that's what caused all the problems. So it's potentially having a not sharp enough good router bit that's caused those issues, maybe.
Yeah. And in the CNC, we do things called, I don't know if the same thing with the router, but a climb cutting versus conventional cutting. I think that just means the direction you're going, right? So I can tell the machine to go this way versus that way, depending on where the spindle's spinning, climbing versus conventional. And so I wasn't taking that into account. But if I did, I could make sure the bit was properly going the right way with the grain, and it wouldn't cause those issues.
Yes. Actually, now you say that, that could have been the case. Unfortunately, it was because of the shape that was already there of the conical table leg. I'm not sure how easy it would have been for me to go the other way. Now I'm thinking about it. All learning curves. You know, I've discovered IKEA still sell these table legs. So if they turn out brilliant, who knows? I might buy some more table legs to give it a go.
It also could be with like the resin they used also.
Yeah, I'm not sure the quality or how things are made. But your guitar you made from a cutting board you'd bought, didn't you? I imagined it wasn't an expensive cutting board. Maybe it was.
A normal price for a cutting board, but I imagine the resin they use had to be special because you're putting food on it, and it's got to be water resistant in some way because you're washing it. So I imagine it was a very special resin they used to like make those laminates.
Right, so just checking in the chat, see if anyone's got anything else they want to add or questions they want to ask.
And then theme
What
light.
would be good? Oh, Brad's there. Brett. I'm going to deliberately get that wrong forever. Corey suggested a couple of people that we could possibly approach for a chat. One of them is I'd not heard of him before. Have you heard of Scar My Guitar?
Yeah.
Yeah, you all have. There you go.
I haven't watched a lot of him, but yeah, I'm familiar with him.
I find it so interesting that the guitar world is so big that it's not as small as I think it is, that there's just so much that's out there that I haven't seen yet. So I like on Instagram, I'm just constantly now getting suggestions because I've culled my Instagram, so it's mainly just guitars now. I'm just constantly getting suggestions of guitar makers that are in the UK. There seem to be loads of them.
If I remember right, I think he played a big part in the first Great Guitar Build Off, and then he decided he didn't want to be involved with it anymore for whatever reason. I don't know. I've talked to him a time or two, but
Oh well, then it was Corey that suggested him, so maybe I'll contact him then. I watched one of his videos, just the most recent one, and it was quite fun. And there was someone else, I don't know if it's his wife, that was in there with him and chatting to him and asking questions, which I quite enjoyed. I think he'd be good.
Daniel, I mentioned this last time. A builder that I think would be cool. It's called Canna Guitars, Canna. He makes his acoustic guitars out of hemp.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to say he's from Germany. I don't know where he's from. But he has got a really great eye for design, 100%. And his manufacturing, he does it all, in-house. Like, it's incredible. Like, I'm really impressed with him. He's kind of soft-spoken, but he does have a YouTube channel, and I think he would be awesome because it's unconventional. I like him because he's unconventional. Like, he does use conventional woods, but he uses this hemp fiber, or hemp wood, or hemp stone, which is really kind of fascinating.
Cool. I've read this time. You mentioned it before. I'm writing it down this time. Mile House Guitar. Again, I don't know who that is.
No, I don't know that one.
I'm definitely going to contact Gabrielle, who Saul also mentioned.
Yeah.
Again, from the Guitar Build Off. Gabriella. Her I just, in her videos, the thing I love the most is not the guitars themselves, but some of the processes she uses. Sort of seeing her sat on the floor with a jointer or something. It's always quite fun.
And she just finished another 3, I think, for a charity, like a fundraiser as well. So she works at a great pace for, she's obviously got her processes sorted out for what works for in her space, and her stuff looks amazing.
Oh, maybe I'll contact her, see if we can get on soon to coincide with her. Not that we're going to publicise much for her, but her charity thing, to talk about that as well.
You know, it's a shame that now that we have this and all these builders that have been involved in GGBO, get to come on and talk about whatever, is in their world, that Great Guitar Build Off won't be around anymore. This would have been great during the GGBO time.
Yeah.
Still, it's nice to learn more about the people that were involved. Actually get to talk to them, and yeah.
I like the idea Owen's mentioned of getting some non-guitar builders that were involved in the GGBO in to talk about it. I'll write that down as a note. There's someone I saw the other day who's just a woodworker who built his first guitar, a James Hetfield inspired guitar, and it was really interesting because he came at it from a woodworking perspective, trying to work out how to do a lot of the processes using processes that he is familiar with. So a lot of the ways he built it aren't the way I've seen other people build it before, but they were still successful.
Interesting.
I need to change that. I'm just reading the other comments. Oh, Godfrey Guitars. Yes, so I'm definitely want to ask Godfrey Guitars. He makes such interesting designs, and just a few months ago I noticed he had started making guitars for himself, which he's then going to sell, as opposed to working on commissions, because he sort of got a bit fed up with that in some ways. But his designs are so interesting. Are you all aware of him? Yeah.
I don't know.
Not sure.
So there are these, I mean, that kind of thing is maybe more tame for him for what some of his look like. I like his really rectangular things like this. This is the first one I think I saw of his, this sort of design. But what's interesting about him is he's mentioned that people have been copying his designs and or making designs that are very, very similar to his and almost claiming their designs, and they've come up with them and then accusing him of copying them. Which I find interesting, especially in a world of social media when we've got almost evidence of when things are dated.
Dates and timestamps and everything.
Yeah.
Sounds like paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah. Geppetto's Guild. Sorry, I'm just writing these things down. Yeah, I think Godfrey would tell you how it is. Do you know him? If anyone knows him. So what I was going to suggest is if people do have ideas, so obviously if you're watching this in the future, you're not in the chat, either leave something in the comments or message me or something. If you do have ideas of someone to approach and it's someone you know, then maybe you can be the middle person to get us together. One thing I want to do, and I'll put this out here now, even though I haven't spoken to them, is we've got the 50th show in July. And what I was thinking was that might be a chance to experiment with also putting this up as an audio. So what I'll basically do is we'd film this, I'd download the audio, I probably wouldn't edit it much, and then upload it to an audio streaming service that puts it out on Spotify, etc. But maybe what I might do is, because some of the podcasts I listen to have Patreons, and I don't want to do that because I don't think we've got enough followers, but what they do is they have the audio is an hour long, and then there's an extra bit for the Patreon. So maybe the audio won't be the whole or be an edited version of what we're doing on YouTube. Because I like the idea of people watching on YouTube where you can join in the comments and we can share images and things. Whereas with the audio, it's great people listening to it, but I don't know if it'll be as much of a community. The audio podcasts I listen to that do have communities have Facebook groups and stuff, but they have way more listeners than we're going to have. So I don't think that's the same thing. But it doesn't seem too complicated to put it up as an audio, I don't think. But it's just another thing to do. So I'm putting it off a bit. I was going to see if Ben from Crimson might want to come on, and that might be a good chance to get him on at that point, because obviously a lot of this exists because of him. And I don't want to get him on and talk about Great Guitar Build-Off. I want to find out more about his background and all of that.
Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't want to either. I had a crazy idea about, having some supervillains on too. Like, you're talking about approaching people, like Tim Hollis.
Who's that?
That would be a shit show. That would be horrific.
Tim.
Yeah, the idea came into my head and it exploded and went away. Immediately thought, bad idea. But I'd also thought, what about, getting Texas Toast on? But I don't know that would go all that well either.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I figure if we get somebody like, somebody bigger like Texas Toast or Ben, we would, have to have some very specific stuff to talk about. And
now those guys can just talk all day long.
Yeah. That's why,
Right.
hear things a little bit, but maybe not. Maybe it'd be more interesting if it just went wild. It would be fun to have Matt on, but I don't know. He's such a character, it might go south.
I'm just writing it down here. Who knows? No harm in emailing people.
Fuck it. Get a hold of Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah, Joe. Call him up.
Then we'll know the truth behind the statement.
Yeah.
I did.
Cool to get and that a lot of traffic.
I have had a chat with Steve Vai online before, but I'm not sure I could get him on. But I regret this so much. I had a chat with his an email conversation after that with his ex-guitar tech, and then we had a WhatsApp call, like video call, that was really interesting. And then things happened in my life and I didn't follow it up. But I might see if I can get back in touch with him. But this guy is crazy. And I didn't get a word in, basically. We talked for an hour and a half and I hardly said any words. He was showing me his setup that he's got. And basically, he's got lots of Steve Vai's old things. I think he buys things in for Steve to try out and then Steve doesn't use them and he uses them. And he's got all the gadgets you can think of set up in this most complicated system, so he can just access everything with his guitars at a touch of a button. So it can flip between different types of effects, different types of MIDI. It was incredible. Yeah, maybe I should get back in touch with him.
Like a guitar EPM switch.
But I couldn't get over how friendly Steve Vai was. Basically, I put up a video about his guitar. Do you remember that Hydra guitar? And it was me speculating what was in it from the point of view of someone that's a maker. And he just watched it and left some comments about how we were on the mark or off the mark or things that he liked about the guitar. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, there's another Texan, Sully.
Mm-hmm.
He's really funny. He's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, hold on. Need more space to write.
I used to watch him, way back when, but
yeah, he's OG. Yeah, way back in the day.
He was one of the few people that you could actually watch. But I mean, it was inspiring to me because he looked like he was, pretty high quality, and he was doing it out of his garage.
Yeah.
I guess Highline's the same way, but
Chicks is a good idea.
But then Sully kind of stopped making videos. I guess he still has a Facebook presence, but I don't hang around Facebook much for that kind of stuff.
So another idea I had is I know we talk about guitar players from their point of view, and we think they might not know enough about how guitars work. Was to get on a professional guitarist so there's someone I know called Leith Hugh who makes videos partly teaching guitar. So he's got online guitar courses and things, but he's also a touring musician. He plays in a few bands and for musicals and things like that. And he reviews guitars. So he's played loads of guitars. He plays them professionally and things. And it'd be interesting, I think, to talk to him about the design of all the different guitars he played and what the effect that has. But I wasn't sure if that's going too far off.
No, that's exactly what we need. We need that perspective of like the professional guitar player to kind of get us see what they really need in an instrument. Because I keep saying that I think the playing is divorced from the building, and it would be a really interesting perspective to see what a player actually wants.
Yeah,
and what's good. What's a good touring, rig.
Yeah. We've talked a little about that in the past. I mean, talking about like knob placement and some things like that. But yeah, some people professional players who have actual real world ideas of what they do and don't like would be really valuable for builders.
Even like, what they look for or want in a touring guitar compared to a studio guitar. Like, is it the same thing? And I'm sure there are lots of players that's what they do. It's the same guitar in both. And then I'm sure there's a lot that would have completely different setups for live and studio stuff. So yeah, there'd be some good insights there, I think.
Okay, I'll definitely contact a few of them. I just saw Chris. I think it was Chris Mulholland subscribed. Is Chris here in the chat, or is that from something else? I don't know quite how my system's set up yet, but I've just set up a thing on this live feed, which means when certain events happen on YouTube, we get notified here. And I very recently set up a membership for the YouTube channel, which I haven't worked out exactly what it's going to do yet. Ray was from Custom Unlimited Designs was the first person to join. Chris is only the second. But the idea is that it's like a Patreon. It's a monthly amount that people subscribe, and I was hoping that might help cover some of the costs I've got of things like this live streaming software and things like that, and also the amount of time I spend doing really trivial stuff. You can't believe how many emails I've sent out for Luthier's lunch break recently, but I'm going to do the same for this. It's quite fun seeing who replies and who doesn't, and people don't. The problem of contacting people through Instagram is, for a lot of people, when you get a message from someone you're not friends with, it goes into a separate folder and you don't hear about it. So,
and I cannot notice it for weeks.
Yeah,
it's a tiny little number up there. I meant to do something for lunch break for quite some. Oh well, since you started it, I haven't really been in the shop. I don't have a specific idea for it, but one of these days.
Well, literally no pressure. Aaron said he might be able to get something done.
Yeah, I've had one in the back of my mind. Really simple, but I reckon I'll since you put out that reminder, it was like, oh no, I think I'll have a go at doing even one or maybe even two over the weekend and see how we go.
Oh, that'd be great. And Mark let me use some of his older videos that he had up, which were just the right length for it anyway, that were kind of giving tips on, like two of them, in fact, were on soldering and different types of wire. And they sort of fit perfectly, because that idea of a Luthier's lunch break is a series of little tips or things that might inspire people. And next week, is the first episode I've got that's supported by someone. So I'm testing something out which might also work for this, which is not big enough yet for anyone to pay to be a supporter on it. But there's a company that I've been getting lots of paints from, lots of lacquers from, and they're going to support this month's show. And I'm going to mention them in it, some of their products, and they're going to, in return, put it in their mail out that goes out to all of their customers, to hopefully spread the word a bit amongst guitar builders about the Luthier's lunch break. Anyway, the idea is we're going to do a bit of tests and do that with a few other companies. And if it works out that it helps bring in some people for some more conversation and some more content and some more sharing and helps them a bit, then in the long run, it might be something that I can keep doing with people, because it's quite easy to do, just to say to someone, do you mind me, I like your products, do you mind me mentioning them if you can mention us? And everyone seems up for it. As long as people don't think we're selling out.
That's always a worry, yeah.
Yeah, I always think of the people, like I grew up my first Metallica album was the Black Album. And when people said that was a sellout, I couldn't understand why that would be a sellout because it was so good.
I couldn't either, but I've been following them since Ride the Lightning. And just because all of a sudden frat boys were listening to Inner Sandman, some little whiners decided that Metallica's a sellout. That was my take at the time. It always annoyed me. Like, what? Why? Where did that come from? Well, I think some people were booty hurt just because they put out a video for one. Because up until that point, they refused to do anything, commercial like videos or anything. So people were calling them a sellout when they did that. But I don't know what it was about the Black Album, other than frat boys. Inner Sandman went, pretty beyond their initial or regular reach. Not to get into all of that.
Well, I think, it was in my local record store in the top 10. That's how I think I found out about it. And that's maybe what annoyed people. It's become mainstream.
They finally hit
anymore.
Yeah.
Imagine if Fender started making ergonomic guitars out of bamboo. Would people say that's a sellout?
Well, look at the times that they did try to make something different, and it kind of flopped. Most of them, the Firebird is probably the most successful one of those, but they tried some experiments that just failed, and maybe there were enough of them they decided to stop trying.
So the other thing I'd like to do, and I haven't mentioned it to anyone yet, is it worked out really well last week doing that different time because Arran could make it and Corey could. And I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me before, but when we have that time zone difference and Arran can't make this slot, the slot we did last week was still fine for him. 6:30. So I think it might be good to every now and then, maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks, to switch the time round so we can get some more Australians on at a time that's convenient. So that make it easy for Corey, for example.
I gotta say, missing last week, I felt like there was a hole in my life.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scott.
It felt
Mark to do that to you.
So long. It was only 2 weeks. 1 week without it, I was like, it's so long ago. It was kind of crazy.
And the week before, Scott was in his office.
Yep. That was actually kind of fun. I just closed my door. Most of the time, I'm left alone. The number of times I got to go to a doctor's appointment or something, and I have to tell somebody, if somebody comes looking for me, and they won't, I'll be here. Yeah.
I appreciate everyone in the chat saying that they will want to be there to be live. But I know there's some people that can't be here live because of that, because of when we do it. So that would be great if we can. Like,
is that the time it was at? 1 a.m. like Texas time?
It was something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 6:30 here for me. It was early hours for you guys, I think.
9:30 here. Because I remember when we had Glyn from Mr. Glyn's Pickups, who's in New Zealand, he got up at something like 3.
Yeah,
I think it was 2. I think they're New Zealand's 2 hours ahead of us, and I think it was midnight for me. So I think it was about 2 o'clock. But that's when I was on school holidays, so I didn't mind staying up, for a late night because I didn't have to work the next day.
I think last week was like 3 a.m. or something. It was,
Well, on that note, I will say that next week we're at our normal time, and we've got Ray from Custom Unlimited Guitars Designs in. Just seeing everyone talking about the time. It's brilliant. People are up at the weird times to join in. Some funny comments about time zone differences. I would love it if anyone is able to think of any ideas for who we could invite on, ways of getting it out there a bit more. I occasionally share the stream to the Guitar Builders Collective Facebook group, and Corey always shares it on the Instagram feed each week. I've been putting in the Great Guitar Build Off every now and then when we've had a specific guest who's part of the Great Guitar Build Off. And there's some other Facebook groups I'm part of that that are luthier based or guitar building based that I've sometimes dropped it in. Like if there's a CNC guest on, or we've talked specifically about CNC, I did join a CNC luthier group, so I'd drop it in there. So it's nice to try and spread it around to some other people. But I did try Reddit and I couldn't get my head around Reddit. So if anyone has any understanding of Reddit and thinks this is at any point suitable to share, I'm sure there's loads of great builders on Reddit that we have no awareness of.
Possible.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not. Maybe Reddit's just a load of rubbish. To me, it's like going back in time and reading some old programming code where it's just line after line of text and an old forum or something. I don't know what's going on most of it.
No.
I only look at it when I am doing a search for a problem I've got to solve, like that electronic stuff I was, mentioning before. And, you'll type in a question and that's where the answers come up. And then you start reading and it's like, this is no help to me.
Yeah, it's almost never helped.
Or it's from like 10 years ago and it's like, I don't think this is the same as what I'm trying to do now.
The one Reddit memory that I had, the biggest, the most prominent memory is I was searching for ice cream sandwich guitars one time, and there was this Reddit thread about, it's a common tag there, and I don't remember what it was. It was like a 3-letter acronym, but it was about why would you, or something to that effect, and not quite ugly guitars, but kind of, why in the hell would you do this? And all of the comments were, what are you talking about? This is awesome. And I didn't have an account, so I still wanted to comment and say, that's my guitar. But to see it pop up places where I was unaware that, it had ever been noticed was kind of fun. I don't think it was quite great taste, but awful execution. It was
awful execution, but great taste. No, it definitely wouldn't have been that, because awesome, great execution and great taste. No, that doesn't work.
No, it was something like "Why would you?" or something to that effect. I don't remember. Yeah, but whoever posted it, nobody agreed with them. So, yeah,
that's good to know.
Anyway,
I always love it when you see other people arguing over your own things.
Yeah. To my knowledge, that is still the only ice cream sandwich guitar in existence.
Nice.
Wait till you see the Korean knockoffs that they're selling on Temu.
Yeah. That's why I resisted. There's some things about that I wish I had done different. And there's been a time or two I thought, maybe I should redo it. But then there would be 2 of them.
I can see what Corey's saying about Pinterest. I always found if you see something on Pinterest, I always think it's just people collecting things they like. But it's very annoying on Pinterest a lot of the time. You click on something, it doesn't link back to the original source. And that's what I find a bit annoying.
I don't spend any time there either.
I found a Devil and Sons playlist that someone else had put together the other day, and I felt quite touched by it. Someone out there felt they needed to look at my guitars and remember them in one place. Anyway, I will have to say good night to some people and good morning. That doesn't work. Have a good rest of your day to some others, because I have to head off, if that's all right.
You get to work.
So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks people in the chat. And
thanks again.
Don't forget, I put it up on the text, but Corey mentioned we've got 5 days left of the Jurgs Cup. Absolutely don't go out your way to finish if it's painful. But if you finish building something and want to share it, put it on Instagram, tag it with Jurgs Cup. If you finish in a few weeks' time, do the same. If you're halfway through something, share it anyway because it's great to see what people are doing.
I guess it's time to come up with an idea.
Use what you've got. Maybe you should repaint your new Strandberg. Stain it purple.
Ask for me.
You should have just hidden any logos on the headstock of that and claimed it as your own build.
Yeah, they put it on the body, actually on the body at the top of the front.
Yeah, okay.
Fretboard. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to hit end stream.
All right. See you next week, guys.
See you later.
Are you looking for an excuse to build a guitar? Or do you just want to be part of the community and see other people's builds? Why not take part in the Jurgs Cup? It's a community build-along where anyone can take part by simply sharing your builds either as photos or videos on social media and using the hashtag #JurgsCup. You can engage in conversations in the comments section and get feedback from others. The build-along is named after Jürgen Zoller of Zoller Guitars, a valued member of the Guitar Builders Collective who regularly commented on other people's builds, giving them encouragement and ideas. The whole point of this build-along is to grow the community, to make online friends, to share ideas and inspire others. This year's competition ends on the 23rd of April, and if you're stuck for inspiration, this year we have an optional film, Use What You've Got. You can find out more via the Guitar Builders Collective forum, the Instagram page, or our